Great Convos Season 5 is here, and we're coming in strong.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Great Convos, where we always say, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find Great Convos. I'm Roger Caesar, and that gentleman over there.
Hi, Roger. I'm Alexandre Matt. We've got longer than usual nicknames today, but before we go there, I wanted to know, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well, and let's say hello to all of our loyal listeners who are already jumping in and starting to chime in here. Thank you for joining us. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate you. Man, it was an amazing weekend for me. A bit of a roller coaster ride, so to speak. Friday, I was a part of a huge event in downtown Toronto, the I Am Unbreakable. The entire thing was about the power and the essence of being a woman, and they wanted to have a few gentlemen on the panel to talk about it from our perspective and why we feel that they are so important to our world and in the business sector as well. So that was amazing to be a part of that. And over the weekend, just an array of emotions. I was dealing with a client yesterday who really showed me the power of being present and being there for people. And I tell you, Alex, this is why I am so excited for even today. I've been waiting a week for this conversation with this gentleman as well. But how was your weekend? And I'll talk about him in a minute. But how was your weekend?
Well, it was fun this weekend. It was a lot of family time, but there was also an event on Saturday afternoon, the AGM, or the Annual General Meeting of Storytellers of Canada, Conteurs du Canada. I've been the treasurer of the board for a few years, and this past Saturday, I was nominated to be the president of the organization, and I was elected unanimously. Thank you. So I don't know yet what's waiting for me, but we'll see very soon. I'm very happy that I can count on the outgoing president, Christine Henneberry. So thank you very much, Christine, for being there with me.
Awesome.
Now, today,
awesome. Well, all the best to you, my friend.
Thank you, Roger. Now, today, Roger, you've got the name Truth Seeker Guy, and I've got the name Blissfully Unaware Guy.
Yes.
Sometimes we can wonder if it's better to know something or to stay unaware. Today we're asking the question: what you don't know won't hurt you, or will it?
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things that we can really ask about not knowing something is our own identity. Maybe some things about our identity that we would like to know or that we don't want to know. So our guest is here to tell us all about that. Roger, who is our guest today?
Oh, my goodness. Listen, before we even get into that, I met this gentleman in November of last year at a conference, and we met in the most weird way, I would say. We were in a lineup ready to take pictures with a celebrity. We got into a conversation, and instantly we connected. It was an amazing time. We went for our pictures. Afterwards, we were all outside having discussions, talking as if we had known each other forever. I reached out and I said to him that, you know what, I know somebody that's from the Baltimore, Maryland area. He was a coach to me, and also he's a world champion and a good friend of mine. He said, well, who is that? And I said, well, Craig Valentine. He goes, oh my goodness, Craig and I were schoolmates. I've known Craig forever. And so we decided to get Craig on the phone. And wouldn't you know it, Craig was just elated that we had known each other, that we were talking. And this gentleman has such a powerful story that I have been waiting to share with our loyal listeners, to you as well, Alex. He's an entrepreneur. He is a podcaster. He has done it all, and he still continues to give back to his community. Please please help me welcome to our show, Mr. Damon Davis.
Alex,
Woo!
Roger, thank you guys so much for a wonderful, wonderful introduction. I love the energy. And while you were sitting there talking, Roger, I was remembering that moment that we met. And I said, let me see if I can find the photo. And there we are, that November day when we realized that we both know Craig Valentine. It was really, really wonderful time. So thank you guys for having me. It's truly an honor to be on your show. Thank you.
Well, we are happy to have you here. First and foremost, Damon, just for our listeners who may not know you, just give a brief introduction into who is Damon Davis.
Man, it's a wonderful question, because that's quite literally part of what I do is ask people, who am I really, right? I invite them to explore that question for themselves. So, I'm father and husband first and foremost. I think that one of the things I'm most widely known for is my podcast, Who Am I Really? Where I interview adoptees about their own adoption and their attempt to find their biological family members. And it's an unbelievable array of stories that are, to be binary, sort of positive and negative. They are inspiring and uplifting, and they are also incredibly challenging and emotional. And aside from the podcast and having written my own book about my own adoption journey, I'm going to be writing a second book about adoption that's going to amalgamate all of the learnings that I've taken from the adoptee community. And it's going to be about the adoptee experience as told to me by these 250 plus adoptees over the last 7 to 8 years. Aside from that, I'm also an entrepreneur. I have several rental properties and investments in companies. We met at a wonderful event called Mega Success, which is put on by JT Fox and his amazing family. And so I just generally am on a voyage to build some generational wealth, to be honest. I'll tell you a quick story. My father, he initiated, co-founded a company here in the DC area, grew to amazing wealth, and they sold for a huge exit. He had a wonderful life thereafter, and unfortunately he died completely broke. And so one of the challenges that I am here to accomplish is make sure that that doesn't happen to me and my family. I want to follow his trajectory of success, and I want our paths to diverge at the point of losing it all. So that's kind of why I'm involved in the entrepreneurial endeavors that I am, is because I want to make sure that, I'm teaching my kids and their kids about what it means to earn, save, and grow your money.
Right. Now, you mentioned your father who adopted you when you were just newborn. I think you spent a few months with a, what do you call it? Like in
foster care.
In foster care before going to your forever home.
Yes.
And what I really like from your story, I read the book, and it's this relationship between your own father who adopted you and your own son that you did not adopt, a natural birth relative.
Yeah.
It's almost like adopted or not adopted, there's still that familial bond. Absolutely. Is that what you find in most children or people who were adopted, that it's almost like blood relatives?
It's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that, Alex, because I think that is a common perception. I think it is also a huge misconception, right? And one of the things that I think folks don't necessarily realize is there is very much a nature and nurture to life, right? Mm-hmm. You are formed by the experiences that you have, but the way that you receive those experiences and the experiences that you seek and the interests that you have are very much innate to who you are, right? If I am a quiet reader, intellectual, I'm going to be very different, say, than an adoptive family who is an outgoing set of athletes and, theater people. We just might be very different. So there's going to be the nature side of me as an adoptee versus their nature side as to how they were raised. Mm-hmm. However, the experiences that we go through as a family are also going to formulate who I am as a person, right? If we're taking the annual family drive across the country to go meet the relatives in some distant state. That's going to form how I think about family and togetherness, for example. On the flip side, if I'm at home and I'm not necessarily super interested in the things that the family is doing, I'm going to have a different perception of how family gets along. They never want to do the things that I do. I never am interested in the things that they want to do either. And so you can see how my nature is going to have me craving certain things. It's going to have me seeking out certain activities, but also it's going to have me receiving the things that are coming at me from a different perspective than if I was, say, natural born to my parents. But this isn't just about adoption either. This is classic. Like anybody who has more than one kid will tell you, one of my kids is this outgoing, crazy kid who's jumping off everything and he's bouncing off the walls. And the other kid is over there reading a book and is so well behaved. And they're both biologically related to those parents.
And we raise them the same way.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is nature and it is nurture.
Now, when you talk about this, let's dive deeper into your story. Obviously, you were raised in an adopted family. When did you get the opportunity to, and you've talked about this in the back when we were talking before we got on the air, but tell us that moment when you wanted to find your biological mom. How did that happen? Was there a great relationship? Were you regretting anything of learning the whole story behind it all?
Yeah, these are wonderful questions. I'll tell you the brief version. Because if I keep going on and on, we'll all be in tears. But here's the deal. I grew up very well adjusted in a middle-class family in Columbia, Maryland. I had 2 Black parents, and I, being African-American myself, we looked like family. And so I never really felt the need to go seek a third parent, right? I don't need more. But it wasn't until I got to be an adult and my wife and we adopted my niece and nephew on her side of the family. We're raising them, and we realized that we also want to have a family, like we want to have a biological child too. And so we start to try to conceive my son. After multiple challenges, my son was conceived naturally. And that makes him special in that way. But also because when my son was born, he was the first biological relative I had ever known in my entire life.
Wow.
And that's poignant, right? If you think about anybody else who grows up in their family, it's automatic that the people whom you are living with, you are genetically related to.
Right.
To have to create a relative with a loved one is a unique experience of an adopted person that not everybody has to go through. And so it tends to hit people when I say that my son was the first biological relative I'd ever known in my entire life. That was the catalyst for me to decide that I wanted to find my biological mother, because as I'm sitting there looking at this infant that can fit in my hands, I'm realizing that at some point in my life, I was that infant for someone else, and I have no idea who those people are. I'm on a genetic family tree, but I'm a branch on an adopted tree at the same time. So you can start to see how this challenge of not understanding your identity makes you quite literally ask the question, who am I really? And so I have every thankfulness for the adopted family that I grew up in. It was a wonderful life. My parents were fantastic. I would not be the man that I am today were it not for their guidance and love. But at the same time, I also was extremely curious about who are these other 2 people that I came from, and what were the circumstances that led me to be available for adoption in the first place.
Right. So you were looking for that truth. You were seeking that truth. It's that moment that you wanted to search for it. And sometimes we think about when I was reading about all these adopting stories, I thought, you think about the adoptee, the child who was up for adoption, but do we think less about the parents who put up their kids for adoption? And when we read the story of your birth mother, it's heartbreaking what she went through. So, and she was waiting for 36 years for her son to reach out.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
how is it that I guess I want to know the difference between searching for your birth parents and searching for your birth children. What's the difference in the type of answers you're looking for?
I think, as I said before, the challenge of growing up with other parents, but realizing that you are from a different set of parents, you're looking for answers about who you are in your genetic state, right? Did I, when I look in the mirror, they call it mirroring, right? If I would, let's just say, for example, I had grown up with two white adoptive parents. The mirroring in my family would not reflect me as a person.
Right.
I'm therefore, if I look at the family photo on the wall, I'm going to look at my nose, my lips, my head shape, my body style, and think to myself, I don't necessarily look like these people. Where did I get these features from? And so and it's, again, I talked about personality traits and sort of your likes and dislikes earlier. All of these things that make us who we are as a person are things that you wonder to yourself, did I get that from my biological mother? Right?
Yeah.
Am I tall like my biological father? Where did I get this athleticism from? How did I get so good at math? Right? These are things that you can absolutely inherit from parents. I believe the difference is that if I was a biological parent looking for a child, what I would be doing is seeking whether that child was okay. What happened to that infant, that child that was in my life at one point that I helped conceive, and I have no idea how the future of that individual turned out. And are we going to be good if we meet? Are they mad at me for what happened? Are we going to be able to have a logical adult conversation about something that is now in the past? Or are we going to have anger and animosity between us? You know, there's a lot of different challenges in the adoptee reunion space, one of which is sometimes a biological parent will find or be reunited with their adopted child and almost feel like they want to parent that child. And the person is like, yo, I'm an adult, man. I got kids of my own. Like, you can't come in here and overbear this situation. So there's a lot of challenges, but I think inherently the main difference is an adoptee is trying to find who they are as a relation to someone else. And the biological parent is trying to figure out what happened to that child that is a result of who I was back then.
Well, here's the thing that I would like to ask, and it goes towards the topic that we are talking about, and that is, you know, what you don't know won't hurt you, or will it? When it was all said and done, and it's a two-part question. First, on a personal note with yourself, and then those who you have interviewed. Was there a moment where you said, I wish I didn't know what I knew? Or from the perspective of those who you've spoken to, were there some negative connotations that happened where they said this was not worth going and finding out?
Yeah, this is a great question. Part of the challenge of being adopted and not knowing is that the very core of who you are as a person is not known to you. And I want you to think about this from a couple of different perspectives. One, let's think about the proliferation of Ancestry DNA and 23andMe and all of these things. They've got millions and millions and millions and millions of users. Not all of those people are adopted. What that tells you is that it is a part of the human experience to want to know more about yourself. How do I fit into the world's history, right? How do I come from African countries and European countries, etc., right? People want to know that stuff. Now, take an adopted person who was quite literally just moved from this family over here and transplanted to this family over here. You can't help but think to yourself, of course, that person's going to want to know more about who they are from their genetic lineage.
Right.
The other thing that I think you sort of alluded to, this question of, is it better to know or not to know? Think about anything else in your life where you've thought to yourself, I'm glad I know the truth,
Right.
right?
Right.
I'm glad I know that my spouse doesn't love me anymore and that we're on the outs because this was uncomfortable. And now at least I know the truth.
Right.
I'm glad I know that my brother is in financial distress because now I can help him. I know the truth. I'm glad I know that my boss doesn't think that I'm doing a good job. And these are the places you prefer to know the truth. Everybody prefers to know the truth, or at least most people do. And
Even if
even when that person's truth is possibly that they are the product of a violent act, that their parent really didn't want them. These are the things that make you reflect and realize where you're coming from, but also appreciate what you may have done or built for yourself. That you have taken what could have been adversity in one situation and made a wonderful life, and maybe be thankful that you didn't grow up in that other situation, for example. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is, of the hundreds of people that I've spoken to about adoption reunion, the vast majority have said, even though this didn't go the way that I wanted it to, and for those that did, of course, they're going to say this too, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I sought the answers. I'm glad I got the truth. I'm glad I saw a picture of these people. I'm glad I talked to my aunt who could tell me about my birth father, etc. People want answers, and it's very, very hard to live without them. And I'll say one more thing. Think about this. If you're living with a medical condition, you then also have a further reason to potentially learn more about your genetic heritage. Did I get this from my mother or my father? Is it prevalent in those branches of the family?
Right.
Where do I get the best treatment from? I spoke to a guest, and she said that she had a very particular female issue. And when she found her biological mother had it. All of her aunts had it. And they all had the best doctors. And once she got in touch with her birth mother to find out what the care was, she was able to get the best care.
Right.
So there's a lot in there in terms of actually getting to know the truth.
Damon, I know that it can be difficult to search for that truth, because there's a lot of what do you call it? You need to balance between all these emotions of the fear of rejection, for example. You don't know if the other person is ready. If it's true that truth is always, well, it's always better to know the truth, even if sometimes it can hurt you at the beginning. Have there been people that you've interviewed where that wasn't the case? You say the vast majority, but sometimes, is it true? Is it possible that what you find, sorry, I'm going to flip the saying, what you know can hurt you?
Nothing in life is definitive, right? So I could say yes, or I could say no. It would be the opposite for someone else. What I've learned from the adoptees I've spoken with is that there are times when what you find out is very hurtful. And sometimes it's things like a person finds their biological mother, and their biological mother will say something along the lines of, if I could have avoided it, I would have not have given birth to you.
Oh.
And they say it in much harsher terms than that. And I think you know what I'm saying. They will say things like, I was told I was going to have anonymity. I don't know why you're seeking me out. That's a chapter in my past. I don't want to know you. That's really tough to have to deal with, because, you know, think about the adoptee. I've been looking for you potentially for years. When I finally put all of the pieces together and I've identified you and I put my guts together to reach out, and then you don't want to be in contact with me, that's a massive blow to an individual. And there's no reconciling it. It's not like the person's going to call you back and say, listen, I said some harsh things. I hope you're okay. They've signed off. They're gone.
That's where it ends.
And so you have to live with that yourself. There have been individuals who have told me that they've found out that they were the product of a violent act. And they have questioned their own existence. But the truth is, how you were conceived is less important to me than what you do with the life that you were given. Right. And so there are times when an individual will find out something that is incredibly hurtful. But I have found that folks seek therapy. They seek podcasts like mine and others. And generally what I'm saying by that is they seek community and support. And it's by being around others who have also endured, who have figured out what the tools are to manage that piece, compartmentalize it, and not let it take over the rest of your life. That really helps people to, for lack of better words, either get over or get by what has happened.
Wow. I mean, we could go on forever with this conversation. It reminds me, Alex, of when we had Mason. Do you remember Mason, Damon, who was at the conference as well?
Yeah.
We had Mason on the show before, and
great.
It was gut-wrenching to listen to him. And similar to you, he has a podcast where he invites people who have gone through similar situations to talk about it, and almost like a therapeutic situation being on his show, on his podcast. And I'm sure that's how it is with you as well.
Yeah,
Damon,
it really is. I'll say one more quick thing on that. I apologize for cutting you, but I've had more than one person say, adoption is something you too could be adopted, and I would never know it if I didn't actually bring it up, or if one of you didn't bring it up. So there's adoptees walking among us all the time. People enjoy coming to the show and speaking or listening to it because these are stories that are unspoken and they're everywhere. And it's very rare. The same way that we just spent maybe 20 minutes talking about this, it's very rare that you get to go in depth on your story and tell everything from the time of your childhood to the moments of reunion and how you're doing now. So I grant people an hour to talk about their adoption experience from beginning to end. And most people leave with a sense of catharsis because they're sitting there speaking with someone who understands what they've been through, and they've got the opportunity to expand upon every detail for an entire hour. It's a rare experience that most adoptees don't really get to enjoy. So, or experience.
And this is something that you have enjoyed by sharing your story because you've published this book. Now, I believe that we can get links to buy your book on that same website of your podcast.
Yeah, that's right. The book is by the same name. It's called Who Am I Really? An Adoptee Memoir. And if you see this face on the book, you know you got the right one.
That's right. And I got to tell you, Damon, it's a real page turner. And we'll end maybe with this that you wrote in the book. This is right after meeting your birth mother. You were so joyful going back on the train or the subway. And you write, I kept the joy to myself, wishing I could spread it over everyone around.
Yeah.
And now this is what you are doing.
Thank you.
Spreading that joy and helping others do the same thing. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it,
for
Alex.
being with us, Damon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Damon, for being a part of the Great Convos. I'm sure that our listeners enjoyed listening to your story and all that you're doing as well. I appreciate you. It's been a pleasure meeting you and still having that friendship and that conversations with you over time. Thank you again, my friend, and all the best to you in your endeavors and success always.
And I wish the same to you too. Thank you both for having me here. It's been a wonderful pleasure. Alex, wonderful to meet you. Roger, great to be reconnected, man.
Yes, for sure. And thank you to all of our loyal listeners. I know we went a little over time, but I'm sure you enjoyed the conversation. Again, keep the conversations going amongst yourselves. If you know somebody who needs or is adopted, who's looking for answers, maybe point them in this direction so we can get them in touch with Damon and see if they can figure out what to do if they are in need of any type of help. And as always, we leave off with saying, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find great convos. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye. See you soon.